morning, everybody. So my name is Hui Ping, and I'm a senior at Barnard College of Columbia University. This summer, as well as like the past 2 years, I have been studying nanoplastics and microplastics at Lamont, which is in upstate New York. So I will talk about plastics and like the difference between microplastics and nanoplastics. The main idea is their size and how they differ. So microplastics are usually less than 5 millimeters, and nanoplastics are usually less than a micron. So that definitely very small to see, and that means it's very like important to know about like the distribution of them, because they affect our health as well as the environmental health. So some of the effects that they have is that they can disrupt the food webs. So if we ingest those foods in the future, we will also be affected, and they also disrupt nutrient cycles. So for the human health, we have found that many plastics, especially nanoplastics, may have the potential to cross cellular membranes. So basically the blood barrier, the placenta, the lung, and if they can affect humans, they can possibly affect babies and fetuses. So they can definitely impact future generations. That's why it's so relevant to the idea of sustainability. So the purpose of my research are basically consisting of 3 purposes. So the first one is to identify the plastic particles in New York City. And I have 10 locations that have been working for the past 2 years. Second, I want to develop methods that can separate plastics from sediments and organics, because when you collect water samples, you don't only find plastics, you also found like a lot of sediments, sand, organics, bacteria. So you have to separate that and just count the plastics. Third, I want to compare different analytical instruments, because we have a lot of instruments available, but not many of them can go to the nano level. So they cannot actually count nanoplastics. They can only count like microplastics or bigger plastics. So it's essential that we can like detect nanoplastics because of the potential that they can cross the blood barrier. And plastics can be found everywhere, such as food packaging, as well as inside your food. So seafood particularly. We are also working with oysters and see how like they are feeding on plastics, just as because oysters are feeders that filter the water, and by filtering the water, they can also get the nutrients, but also the plastics. And of course, we also want to test water, because a lot of water comes in water bottles. So it's really important that we have to see all these sources of plastic. So there are different research opportunities. How I found mine was because I was searching and co-emailing different professors at Columbia, but I know that you can also just do research by searching online and find different institutions. And definitely you can find funding from the National Science Foundation. I have a link there that you can click, and then you can find more research opportunities for yourself. But like after graduation, after the research, what can you do? So you can definitely keep studying. So you can apply for a master's, for a PhD, but of course you need funding. So it's essential that you keep like finding funding for yourself, as well as contacting other people. And you can have different jobs opportunities. You can be a research assistant, you can be a research technician. So you can just like prepare the procedure, as well as prepare the lab and like maintain it clean. You can also be a research scientist. You can actually like be part of the lab and like conduct experiments. Or you can work in academia as a professor and like influence future generations, as well as teach younger minds how to like protect their own future, as well as to just implement sustainable resources. And you can also be a data scientist, which is to collect data from the past, analyze it, and like learn from the past to protect the future.
I'm interested in learning a little bit more about how and why you picked your research topic. It sounds very interesting. And maybe talk a little bit about what type of results you're expecting to get from your research.
So currently we have like different methods that we are testing, and I am hoping that we can detect nanoplastics. And we fortunately have access to Raman, which is an instrument that relies on chemical spectra. And we're trying to match different spectra from lab-made plastics to environmentally exposed, because you want to have a match of like what can you expect from real plastics. And unfortunately, this instrument, Raman, is very expensive, and only Colombia for now that has it. But other institutions are trying to see if they can acquire SRS or the spontaneous Raman, and hopefully we can actually detect the nanoplastics in water samples. I already found some nanoplastic particles in 3 locations, and those locations are usually near the waste treatment plants. So it makes sense because it shows that a lot of policies and treatments, or like the government in this term will be the private sector, is not really like doing proper policies to clean the water before disposing it to like nearby bodies of water. That means it's really important that we are showing results. Unfortunately, we don't want to just stop like with water samples. We also want to move to tissues, especially oyster samples and possibly human tissue samples. Colombia has a medical center that is providing tissues, and we also have a collaboration with a college in New Jersey that they are providing samples from rats, because we want to see if rats are being after ingesting a certain amount of plastics, we want to see if they're actually crossing the barriers, such as the brain or the placenta, and we're testing that. But for the tissues, they're definitely more complicated because you have to digest all the organics, meaning you have to use different enzymes to digest the fats, the proteins, just to have the plastics. But because plastics are so fragile, they can also be degraded. So we have to get rid of the organics, but at the same time keep the plastics. And that will be for the future years. For my thesis, I'm just focusing on water samples, but for my PhD, I will be focusing on the tissue samples. It's becoming a really interesting topic, not only for our current situation, but like also for like politicians, because more data and more research are influencing the policy making. So it's definitely opening a lot of doors.
Maybe we can give a chance for Hui Ping to talk about any suggestion about how we can make contribution.
Yeah, sure. So I found that plastics are not just like a water bottle or like food packaging. It's actually everywhere. That includes insulation, so like materials for your like fire or like electricity as well. Plastics also in clothing, and actually most of your clothing is made of plastic, if not all. And if you check your tags behind your clothing, if it says polystyrene, polyamide, those are just plastic polymers, and they are fancy ways of different names of plastics. But if you see that, that means it somehow the item, it was made from plastic. And if you keep buying plastics or clothing in this sense, you will be polluting more the environment. We're actually testing with a collaboration with Stony Brook and NYU, how like different samples from laundry. So after we do laundry, or like we go to student dorms, we will collect samples from the laundry machines and we filter that. We have found a lot of filaments made of plastic, and they match perfectly with the plastic spectra that we have from lab-made plastics, showing that we have plastics in water samples and laundry. So it's really important that we make conscious decisions, try not to just buy like items just because there's a specific trend, just because of pressure of society or following specific trends. Think more about the future and like long-lasting items, and think of maybe exchanging your clothes or donating clothes instead of just leaving them there. So check your closet before purchasing any other items.
What is sustainability? Sustainability is the ability of a system or a society to function and grow over time without compromising the future generation to meet their own needs. Sustainable meaning we got to keep on doing it without jeopardizing our natural resources. So what that includes is balancing economics, environmental, and social consideration to create a sustainable and equitable future. In practice, that means using resources efficiently, minimizing waste and pollution, promoting social equity, and preserving biodiversity and ecosystems. It applies to all aspects of life, including business, government, and personal decision-making. So with that, we want to talk about why is sustainability important? It is important because it protects our environment and our climate. Without this protection, we cannot preserve our natural resources and cannot keep our world sustainable for the future generation. Secondly, it is important because it allows us to have economic stability. Without it, we cannot have long-term growth of our economy. You know, as the world grows, we need the economy to grow with it. So it's important. Thirdly is because of social equity. It's important that everyone have access to the same resources, because otherwise it will not be sustainable. So those are the reasons why it's important to have sustainability. And then, you know, the panel members, when they go into the discussion, they will talk more about it. So next thing I want to talk about is very often when people talk about sustainability, the term SDG and ESG come up quite often. SDG are essentially 17 principles established by United Nations in 2015. It's the framework for people at the country level, at the local level, and at the individual level. That what are the goals that all of us need to achieve in order to preserve and promote sustainability. So these are the 17 goals that are very important. ESG these are the framework that help investor or us to evaluate a business, the performance of businesses. ESG typically refer to investment because these are the guidelines that we need to use to measure the performance of an enterprise along with the financial accomplishment. So nowadays, a lot of big companies, publicly traded companies, they will publish their ESG performance report along with the financial performance. So at the big picture, sustainability is like the global ecosystem, and SDG and ESG is a subset of it. SDG, again, is a framework mostly for country, you know, to develop, and ESG is for investment. I am Tony Lau, and I have experience in financing sustainable renewable energy projects as well as sustainability startups.